Sabrina here from Scrappy Tails Crafts, and today I'm going to be sharing how to create a very simple easel slider card. So let me go ahead and show you guys what this card looks like. As you can see, there's a pull tab at the top. You just pull it up and the easel kind of goes up and reveals a hidden message. And what's really great about this particular easel card as opposed to the one I showed a couple days ago is that it stands upright because of this pull tab mechanism. With the other easel cards that you might see, you have to kind of manually create the easel and then it stands upright with a sentiment. But even if I didn't have this sentiment down here, it would still stand upright. So this is just a really fun little interactive card, and then again, when you push it in, it folds flat and fits in an envelope. So the stamp set that I'm featuring today is called Easter Blessings by Scrappy Tails Crafts. You can see that I made a pink and a blue version as well. I figured, you know, I'm creating an interactive card. I kind of want to learn how to create these. Why not create 3 in different colors? So I will say that these are much easier than I thought they were to create. And I'll give you all the tips and the things that I learned and what I could have done better and let you guys know how to create these. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day after watching my video, and I will go ahead and see you guys on the other side of the camera. Alright, so here is the stamp set that I chose for today's video. It is called Easter Blessings, and I wanted to use this set, 1, because I needed some more Easter cards, and 2, it's a gorgeous set, and I thought that the cross would be the perfect focal point on the front of my A2 card, and that little wreath at the bottom of the stamp set would be perfect to reveal my sentiment for the easel card. So that's what I went with, and I did create 3 cards with the same design, just with different colors. So I am showing you guys the Copic marker combos that I used for the pink and yellow cross, but I'm going to show you guys how I colored in the blue cross, and I did color in the crosses all the same, so like they're all white with a little gold trim, and then I did use the same green markers for all 3 cards as well. So I went ahead and stamped out all of the images from the stamp set with Memento Tuxedo Black on 110-pound white Nina cardstock, and I will be coloring in these images with my Copic markers. I do have the caps on screen, and I did speed this up quite a bit. I wanted all of my crosses to be white, but the flowers and the leaves on the cross would naturally cast a shadow, so I am adding C4 right up against those roses and leaves where they overlap the cross. I'm barely touching that marker to the paper. I am then extending that color out with my C2. I am using more of this color, but still very minimal because I do want this to look like a white cross. And then I will add my C0 marker just to completely fade that into the white of the paper. And it always looks gray until you add more color to the image. So at first I was kind of worried that this might be too dark, but I ended up really liking how it turned out because it does look like the flowers are kind of raised up from the cross. So here is what I envisioned, like a gold trim around the cross, so there is like an outline that goes around it. I actually illustrated this image, or the entire stamp set, and I just kind of envisioned that being like a gold trim or a silver trim. So for the gold for all 3 crosses, I used YR27, YR23, and just a little bit of Y18 to really make it look like a yellow gold. And then for my roses, I'm going to use B16, B14, and B12. And originally I kind of felt like this might be too dark, but the B16 is almost a direct match for Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink. So I knew I wanted to use B16, which happens to be the darkest of the 3. And it ended up looking so good with the ink blended background. So when I color with my Copics, I 90% of the time go from darkest to lightest because I do have the tendency to overblend, and if I start with my lightest, then go to my darkest, and then back to my lightest, I always end up kind of merging the colors into one shade. So starting with my dark color forces me to leave more highlights and to go over the image only one time with my lightest marker, so I get more contrast and highlights. And these roses are very detailed, so I had to be pretty careful about not losing the highlights with the petals. So you can see when I go over my lightest marker, there's still a lot of white still showing, and you can even leave some of that white in if you want, but I decided to fill it in. And for my flowers on the blue and the pink card, I just used my lightest marker, so in this case B12, and I just added that right to the centers of those really tiny flowers on both the wreath and the cross, and I just left it at that. I did not color the entire flower, just the centers, so it still appears white from a distance, but when you look at it close, it is blue and it ties in nicely with the color of the roses. Now for the leaves, I kind of did something different because I did choose some green colors that were very close together in shade or tone. So I actually started with my lightest color first, and then I added the mid-tone in the dark, but I didn't blend any of those together because, like I said, they're very similar in shade, but just slightly darker. And if I would have started with my darkest marker and finished with my lightest, again, I would have been left with one solid color. So here is my mid-tone, and I really could have probably just done 2 markers for the leaves, but I actually really enjoyed coloring all 3 of the cards, even though they're the same image. It's fun just changing up the colors. You'd be surprised how much you enjoy taking the time to really color a nice sized image. I knew this was going to be my focal point, so I decided I'll just use 3 markers. But you can see as I finish up the coloring on the cross that the gray virtually disappears, and it does kind of look like a white cross with shading. So here are all of my colored images. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut them, and I want to point out that that wreath cuts the center out. So there is that Easter blessing stamped in the inside, but once you die cut it, you're left with the frame so that you can add the other sentiments inside instead. So that's what I'm going to do for my 3 cards. So for my first card, I'm starting with the yellow one. So I'm using Squeezed Lemonade and Carved Pumpkin. For all 3 of my cards, I really wanted to create like a dramatic blend, so I'm going to focus the darker color around the edges and then try to brighten the center up with the lighter color. And I did try to find at least one of the 2 inks match the markers that I chose for the roses. I am blending currently on a panel that is cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and I'm going to also blend onto a slightly smaller stitch rectangle that I cut, and that is going to be underneath the easel. I wanted it to look continuous when you pull the tab up. So I am going to splatter some water onto these panels, and for the blue and the pink, I did add some silver pearlescent watercolor along with the water splatters, and I kind of wish I added gold to this one, but I didn't think of it at the time. That was actually the first panel that I blended on, and I actually glued my die cuts already, so I decided I'll just leave it. But here I am blending Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock Feathers for my blue cross, and like I mentioned, this is like a perfect match for the colors I chose for that blue cross. And I don't think that there are any blue roses, but I really just wanted to use my blue Copic markers because I don't use blue at all. I think it's my least used color because if you think about it, there's not that many blue things in this world. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to splatter some water onto these panels. Again, these are the same size, 4 by 5 1/4, and then a slightly smaller rectangle that is going to go underneath the easel. Here I'm adding my pearlescent watercolor just to add some shine, and then I'll move on to the pink card. So I am working kind of in a mass-producing format, so I'm getting all my backgrounds done, all my coloring and stamping, and then I'll kind of assemble everything at once. But I do start with the yellow one first because it was the first time I made this type of easel card. So I kind of break out of my rhythm after these backgrounds here. But I am using picked raspberry and spun sugar for the pink combination. And again, I will splatter some water and the pearlescent watercolor. And like I said, I did want the edges to be very dark, so I do go back and add some darkness to each of the panels because it is going to draw your eye in towards that cross. So here I'm adding the water splatters, and I'm taking it from my water bottle cap because I was too lazy to get a little cup. And then I will sprinkle on that pearlescent watercolor. And I know you can't really see it, but here I'm tilting it in the light and it just shines so pretty. I love my Gonzai Tombi pearlescent watercolors. So here I have a stitch rectangle that's actually a little bit smaller than that small rectangle that I blended for each of the 3 colors. So this is one size smaller, and I'm going to partially die cut it. So I only cut the bottom part of this rectangle. You can see I am maneuvering my plates so that they're underneath that final cut line at the top. I want to make sure that that is not going to get cut. So I'm making sure to move my plates down, and then I will be left with a partial die cut. So I'm going to do the same thing with the pink. And in case you're wondering, I'm cutting from that panel that's 4 by 5 1/4. And then I want to create a score line connecting those 2 cut lines so that I do have a rectangle, but instead of having a cut rectangle, I have 3 of the sides cut, and then the top has that score line. So I did that with the yellow as well. And then I folded the rectangle that's cut inside. So I folded it in half so that the other end met up with the score line, and then I went ahead and reinforced that top score line. So I'll do it again with this this yellow panel. And you can do this with your scoreboard, but I found it much easier to just do it by myself. So here I'm lining it up to the score line and using my bone folder to crease it. And that looks pretty good. And then I'm just gonna glue my cross to the bottom part of that score line. You don't wanna glue it to the top, otherwise you will close the whole card down and it won't be able to pop up. So now I want to work on the sentiment that's going to be revealed underneath the easel card. So these are the slightly smaller ink blended panels, and towards the bottom, but not all the way to the bottom, I stamped out my sentiments. So for the pink, I chose Let Us Rejoice, and for the blue, I chose Easter Blessings, and I white heat embossed both of them. And then I decided to glue them onto a panel that's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 inches. And then I'm going to center these panels and move them all the way to the top. So there's not a border at the top, and that is because I want to have my pull tab up there. You can glue this directly to your card base, but I was worried that I wasn't going to center it correctly, so this is why I'm doing it this way. So here I have my wreaths, and I am generously adding glue behind them because I do not want the pop-up portion to get stuck underneath those leaves. I want to make sure that it is completely flat, and it ended up working perfectly. So now I'm going to work on the pull tab. So I have a panel here cut to 3 1/4 inches by 5 1/2. I am scoring at 5 inches, and this is where it gets a little bit fiddly, but after I made this yellow one, it was pretty easy. So here you can see I am lining up my pull tab with the rectangle that's cut from the panel, or partially cut. And then I have that score line at the bottom of the pull tab here, so I'm cutting below that score line right up against the actual rectangle. I want this to be the same width across because that is where I'm going to be adding my double-sided tape, and this is what's actually going to connect the 2 pieces and allow the front part of it to pop up. So I'm going to add my double-sided tape. I think my most asked question is what tape I use, and this is by Uline. I think you have to buy a certain amount of it for it to be a really good deal, but it is the stickiest tape I own, and I always use it for all of my interactive cards. That being said, it is super sticky, so once it's down, it is down, so I'm trying to line this up very carefully. You can see that I folded over the tab so that it is facing upwards, and then I'm going to glue it to the bottom of this partially die cut rectangle with the fold line across the center. And here you can see how this easel card is going to work. The edges are going to be glued down flat, and the center will be open so that it can be moved up and down. So I am going to add foam tape to the edges here. Now this was my first one I made, so the pull tab is a little bit crooked. I should have lined it up better. But this being my very first easel card, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I did add foam tape to the back of the ink blended panel only to the frame. I did not add any foam tape where that pull tab is going to, I guess, flow up and down. Okay, and so then for the yellow one, for some reason, I forgot to glue this down after I white heat embossed my sentiment. For this card, this one says he is risen. And I just love that you can see that little sentiment peeking through. And then to embellish all of my cards, I added very small pearls to the actual like viney leaf thing. And then a couple larger gems around the actual easel portion just to fill in the space. And I did add the little yellow roses as well, kind of circling around the cross. Again, I only added glue to the bottom part of that cross, and the roses I just glued directly onto the panel. So I have a little stamp set here by Lawn Fawn. I think it's called Push Here, and it's specifically made for interactive cards. So I chose the little stamp that says Pull Here. And I'm going to stamp that right at the top. I did round the corners with my scissors. I don't have a roundy tool, which is one thing I need because I am so bothered by how uneven those edges are, but I thought that it would look softer. By the way, I did get this tutorial from Jennifer McGuire. I will have her video. She goes through this much slower than me and probably explains it better than me, but it's super easy. Here I'm just adding my blue panel on top. Again, I added foam tape to the frame, and then I'll glue this directly to my card base. And with that pull tab completely folded down, this will fit into an A2 card. And I just love how the easel stands upright on its own, and you don't need to have a sentiment under there. You can have a completely flat panel and just have a sentiment being revealed without any extra dimension added. But I decided that that little wreath would be really cute to frame the sentiment. So there I added my pink panel, and then I'm gluing it onto my white card base. And then here I'm going to show you all 3 cards that I created. Let me know which color was your favorite. I think mine is the yellow. The older I get, the more I seem to like yellow. And it's just such a bright and cheerful color. I think it goes really nice with the Let Us Rejoice sentiment. I don't know if I mentioned, but all of those sentiments do come in that Easter Blessing stamp set. And if you do want to pick up this set, you can use code STCYouTube10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. But yeah, that is going to complete today's video. Let me know what you guys think. And if you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post my next video. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye.